Hi theory students. Today we're going to be talking about seventh chords, and this is the first part of that discussion. We'll show you how to build seventh chords and to give them labels, and then we'll talk about what to do when the root is not necessarily in the bass and we have inversions of seventh chords. First, the construction. We can extend a normal triad by adding a major or a minor third beyond the fifth of the chord. So here, for example, if we have a major chord, root, third, fifth, we can go another third above the G and add a fourth note. We call this a seventh because the distance from the root to that new top note is a seventh. So this is a seventh chord. Since we have four different chord types, major, minor, diminished, and augmented, and two types of thirds that we could add to the top of each, a major third or a minor third, we can now form 8 different seventh chords. In practice, we only use 5 of these 8 possibilities. I'll continue writing these out, and then we'll worry about how to label these. So let me start with the 2 C major chords. The first one I added a major third above the G, that's why it's a B natural. And for the second one, I'll add a minor third above the G. Now let's do the 2 seventh chords based on a minor triad. In the first one, a major third above G, B natural. So now the minor third above this will be a B flat, and this is a minor chord, so we use an E flat there as well. If I write the 2 diminished chords, a major third above that uses a B flat, and this one is a little messy, so hang in there. If that's the diminished chord, then a minor third above G flat is a B double flat. Ouch. The 2 augmented triads, that's one of them. A major third above G sharp is B sharp, and a major third, minor third above G sharp is B. So that gives us 7 of these potentially. Of the 3 that are not used commonly, that one, composers found that a little bit harsh. And very often when we hear this, the B natural will resolve up to C, giving us a regular minor triad. Likewise, the 2 augmented ones, you've noticed that the B sharp is the same note as a C. So that's not really a seventh chord at all. That's just an augmented triad. And finally, this one here, generally, composers don't use that. They hardly like augmented triads at all, and that chord in the tonal period isn't used either. Here's a chart that shows what's left. So here, I have a chart where I've shown you the quality of the triad and the added third above the fifth. So a major triad that adds a major third above the fifth. The distance from the root to the seventh of the chord is a major seventh. And when we name these, the long way to name them is by naming both the triad and the seventh. So this would be a major, major seventh chord. The second on the list, major triad and a minor third above the fifth, or in other words, a minor seventh. We call that a major minor seventh. We said that the minor major is not used. We'll skip over that. Fourth on the list, minor triad, minor third above the fifth. That is a minor minor seventh chord, because the distance from the root to the seventh is a minor seventh as well. Diminished chords. If we use a major third above that G flat and add a B flat, triad is diminished, the seventh is minor, C up to B flat, so that's a diminished minor seventh. Diminished triad, minor third above the G flat, that's where the B double flat came in, and that's a diminished seventh. We have short names for these. Major major seventh, we just call that a major seventh chord. Minor minor seventh, we call that a minor seventh chord. Diminished seventh, we call that a diminished seventh chord. The other two, major minor, we often find this on scale degree 5 in a key, so that's come to be known as a dominant seventh chord. And the diminished minor seventh, because only half of those elements, the triad, is diminished, we call that a half diminished seventh chord. And now on to inversions. Like triads, each of the notes of the seventh chord can take turns being the bass note. Here, we not only have root position, first inversion and second inversion, but with the seventh chord possibly in the bass, we may have a third inversion. I'll show you this on the staff, and the figures that we would use would be something like this. So let's write a major minor seventh chord, that's root position, first inversion, the third of the chord E is in the bass. Note that when we write this in closed position, we have a second somewhere up there where the seventh of the chord and the root of the chord meet. We have a second inversion. And we have a third inversion. So root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. Let's figure out the numbers. When we count above the C, we get a seventh, a fifth, and a third. When we count above the E, we get a sixth, a fifth, and a third. We count above the G, we get a sixth, a fourth, and a third. And finally, when we count above the B flat, we get a sixth, a fourth, and a second. We don't use all three numbers in the figures. That would be kind of unwieldy. So just like with our regular triads, we have a shortcut for this. We have to write the seventh in to show it's a seventh chord, but for root position, we can leave out the 5 and 3 very often. For first inversion, we can leave out the 3, but we write 6, 5. If we left the 5 out as well, we'd mistake that for a first inversion regular triad, not a seventh chord, so we need both those numbers. Here, in the second inversion, if we left the 3 out, we would think the 6-4 was just a triad and not a seventh chord. So we'll change it up and we'll leave the 6 out of that one. And likewise, we can leave the 6 out of this. So first inversion, a 7, 5, 3, we just write the 7. Root position, first inversion, 6, 5, 3, we'll write the 6 and the 5. Second inversion, 6, 4, 3, we'll write the 4 and the 3. Third inversion, 6, 4, 2, we'll write the 4 and the 2. Here's a handy way to remember this. It's like counting down from 7. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. And it's the easy way to remember which is which. In the next video, we'll talk about inversions on the staff in the key, and then we'll also talk about how to do common chord symbols for these. That's all for today.